Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. Our main topics today: the increased wave of terror attacks against Israelis and the changing face of the U.S. Democratic Party and what this means for U.S.-Israel relations. I'm Ladar Greve-Lazi, and joining me in the studio to discuss are Director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman, founder of Torat Tzedek, or Torah of Justice, Rabbi Arik Ashelman, political advisor Tzofia Nahon, and strategic advisor Yoram Dori. Welcome all. This past week saw a bloody new wave of terror attacks against Israelis living in Judea and Samaria. On Wednesday, a 4-day-old baby who was delivered prematurely when his mother was shot in a Palestinian drive-by shooting died. Shira Ishran was 7 months pregnant when she, along with her husband and 5 others, were injured in an attack while waiting at a bus stop outside of Ofra. That same week, on Thursday, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in another shooting attack at Asaf Junction, just 2 kilometers from Ofra, while another soldier and a civilian woman were seriously injured. Also on Thursday, 2 border guards were lightly injured in a stabbing in the Old City of Jerusalem. And on Friday, a Palestinian seriously wounded an IDF soldier after he stabbed him and bashed his head with a rock in Beit El settlement. Israeli forces have tracked down and killed the terrorist responsible for the Ofra attacks, as well as the terrorist who killed 2 Israelis in October in the Balkan Industrial Park. Hamas has claimed responsibility for both attacks.
אמש באנו חשבון עם המרצחים של ברקן ועופרה, והיום ספגנו פיגוע קשה עם חיילים הרוגים. אנחנו נבוא חשבון עם מי שביצע את זה. העיקרון שמנחה אותנו הוא שמי שפוגע בנו וגם מי שמנסה לפגוע בנו, דמו בראשו, והאויבים שלנו יודעים את זה. אנחנו נשיג אותם.
The murder of Israelis, innocent Israelis standing at a bus stop, is unacceptable. We will not accept this terror here in Binyamin, here in Israel, and we're going to have answers to this. We expect the government to build as many homes as possible, to do everything possible to stop this terror.
نحن نبارك هذه العملية البطولية والشجاعة والتي تأتي كرد فعل طبيعي على جرائم الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وانتهاكاته بحق أهلنا وشعبنا في الضفة وغزة وفي القدس وفي باحات المسجد الأقصى.
So a very bloody week indeed. Let's ask an obvious question, right? Why this new wave of terror attacks? Why now? Let's start with you, Dr. Sherman.
Well, it's not why now, it's why not before, why not after. It was obviously going to happen. What you're seeing is the collapse of a concept, the futile attempt to try and reach some peace agreement with the Palestinians. The problem in Judea and Samaria is not operational. The problem is conceptual. And in order to design effective policy, you have to conceptualize the conflict correctly. And the conflict is a clash between 2 inimical collectives with irreconcilable founding narratives. Only one side can emerge victorious, the other must be vanquished. There are no consolation prizes. Israel must realize that it's facing an Arab collective whose enmity is not rooted in what the Jewish state does, but what the Jewish state is. And until it recognizes this fact, it will never be able to formulate policy that can contend with the realities. And if you want the ultimate indictment of the 2-state folly, look at Gaza. What's happening in Gaza, and never mind the fate of the Jews, but the fate of the Arabs is the fault of people who are trying to foist statehood on an imaginary people who cannot really manage their affairs because that's not their goal. Their goal is not to build a state. Their goal is to dismantle a state, not to have self-determination for themselves, but to destroy self-determination for the Jews. And unless you understand that, nothing makes sense and nothing will make sense. The Israeli government is backing away from confrontations in which Israel can win until it backs into a confrontation that Israel may not be able to win, but only win at exorbitant cost.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Sherman saying that, it's a matter of one side winning and the other side being vanquished, so to speak. Do you agree with this assessment?
Of course not. And that's the same folly that from the Labour Party that they quote everybody has been following for 100 years, and it's got more Israelis killed. Yes, it has. It endangers my children.
Sorry?
You are endangering with that idea my children.
What endangers children is giving them self-determination.
And I am telling you that, of course, I think we all agree that these terror attacks are terrible. the framing of this was bad, the way this was framed just now. There was no talk about all the violence. I myself was attacked by settlers last week who jumped into my car, punched my tires. It wasn't like murder, thank God, but it came close. And the fact is, though, the fact is, this was when settlers were trying to take over land. The further folly is to say that now we're going to build more settlements, and that is a failed policy. It's never worked. It's only got more Israelis killed. And that's what it will do.
I'm sorry, you can say it again and again and again, but it will never become true. It's not true, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's not true.
All the time, Israeli Palestinians make their children meet me.
And
they say, my child was
that because Israel lives in the land of Israel,
no,
in the land of Israel, you say that that's the reason that Jewish die?
You're not listening. I never said that.
Sorry.
I never said that. I'm saying it's because we are stealing Palestinian land. We are oppressing Palestinians.
It's not a Palestinian land. You're a rabbi. You're a rabbi. Read the Bible, man. Read the Bible.
When did the Palestinians? Excuse me. When did the Palestinians demand? When did the Palestinians demand?
How can you call?
Excuse me, Rabbi. You are misrepresenting.
Sorry, Dr. Matthew. Sorry. Answer for
one. Let's stop for 1 second. Let's hear from Sophia.
I'm going to answer your question.
I didn't ask a question. Let me ask the question.
All right, let's hear from Sophia. 1 second. Let's hear.
Tell me.
Yes.
What year exactly in the history of the world this nation, the Palestinian nation, was exist? Or wait a second, can you tell me who is the biggest leader of this historical people, the Palestinians? Are you saying that we are still in a Palestinian land? There's nothing like that.
Sorry. I'm going to answer you. Let me answer you. You're mixing up between sovereignty and ownership of land. From Prophet Ezekiel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Cook, Rabbi Uziel, and so on and forth. Most, not all, of course, there's never one Jewish answer. Most Jewish religious Talmudic and other Halakhic scholars have said that non-Jews have the right to property in the land of Israel.
So who says they don't?
Who
says they don't?
Well, that's what she's saying.
No.
I'm saying something else. I'm saying something else.
Rabbi, let's hear from Sophia.
When I talk about stealing land, I'm not talking about sovereignty. I'm talking about whoever is sovereign. We can't steal their land.
Okay, 1 second. 1 second. Let's hear from Sophia.
The history is
Martin, 1 second. Sophia, let's hear your thoughts.
Thank you. The history is telling us another story that from your story. This land was occupied again and again by all the in the last generation. It was under the British, before that the Ottomanics, the Jordans. It's passed from one nation to another. But if you go to the beginning of it, it was belong to the Jewish. Now, if you're telling me that when the Jordans occupied this territory and give the land as a present to specific people, and you saying that that's what made them the owners of this place, we have a huge problem. First, as a rabbi that you say that, and second, as a Jewish person that you say that.
We just passed a law last year saying that even when the state of Israel knows this is private Palestinian land, we can still steal it.
Okay, wait. Let's stop for a second. I'd like to, Sophia, Martin, 1 second. All right, let's hear from Yoram. Yoram, so Rabbi, 1 second. Yeah, let's hear your thoughts. Go ahead.
For me to take part in this shouting here and emotional discussion. I don't want to be emotional. I'll speak a little bit cool. We lost a lot of casualties this week by terror attacks. And I think we have to discuss, one, how can we minimize it, maybe to minimize to the maximum those terror attacks. And, there are illusions. One part of my right wing says that if we will build more settlements, it will reduce terror. The other side, the left wing, will say that if we will withdraw from all... Just a moment. Let me say, I'm not saying you, I think the left wing of Israel. I think that if we will leave the territories, the West Bank will live in peace and terror attacks will stop. I think there is one base for combating against terror attacks. It's intelligence. not deterrence, because in the West Bank, whom are you going to deter? It's intelligence, and it's a role of our security forces, of the Shabak and the IDF. And if we failed last week, and we failed, we have to try harder and harder and harder, and that's the discussion at that time. Then, after we'll reduce the terror, we can talk about history, about Rabbi Akiva, about our right of all Israel, of part of Israel, about the human rights of the Palestinians, etc. When terrorists are shooting Israelis, now we have to stop it. That's our main goal and our only goal at that moment.
I'd like to hear final thoughts from Martin. Go ahead.
There are about 3 questions. When did Judea and Samaria become the ancient homeland of the Palestinians? You know that in the first version of the Palestinian covenant, they explicitly say they have no claims to Judea and Samaria, the West Bank and Gaza. The second thing is when Ahmad Shukeri, Arafat's predecessor, on the eve of the Six-Day War, threatened to massacre the whole of the Jewish population and liberate the homeland. What homeland was he going to liberate? Judea and Samaria? It was already under Arab control. And so tell me, and I would like to know, if you could tell me which clause in the handbook of Jewish morality says I have to sustain my enemy. Because if you do not recognize the enemy, you're endangering your people, you're endangering your children, you're endangering my children.
I'm happy to answer. First of all, as a human rights defender, I don't have a position on 1 or 2 state solutions or this sovereignty or that sovereignty. I'm not taking a position on whether Israel or somebody else will be sovereign there. I'm saying that if a Palestinian family has proven a property claims, particularly those which Israel, the state of Israel itself, recognizes, but now says we can take the land naked.
If you were a real human rights activist, I'm trying to answer your question. Well, let me just interject. If you were a real human rights activist, for instance, in Amona, to resettle the Jewish settlers in Amona, it cost up to 150 million shekels. If you offered the Palestinian landowner or alleged landowner half of that, quarter of that, 1/10 of that, he would be glad to accept it, but he couldn't because he would be killed by his own people. So you're not protecting his human rights to maximize his profits from his property. You're just protecting the right for them to evict Jews.
Thank you, and we'll move on to our next topic. So the November midterm election saw the Democratic Party bounce back, scoring a major victory in Congress. Joining its ranks are many young new faces whose views on Israel are considered skeptical at best. The past month has seen 2 congresswomen-elect, Rashida Tlaib, who is the first Palestinian-American ever elected to Congress, and former Somali refugee Ilhan Omar, announce their support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. Additionally, Tlaib has said she will organize a delegation to what she called Occupied Palestine in lieu of the annual trip to Israel offered by AIPAC to all freshman members of Congress. While senior Democrats such as Nancy Pelosi have reaffirmed the party's support of Israel, the question remains whether these young new voices will change the tide in the years to come.
Every Congress, I listen, I learn, we incorporate, we are invigorated by new members coming in and new thinking of our members. So this was no different than any ever before. It is different in that we have an historic freshman class by dint of their experience, their diversity, their gender. It's something very, very special. And let us just take a moment to dwell upon the fact that we are in the majority. Majority, majority, majority. And that our ranking members in a matter of weeks will be Madam and Mr. Chair, and that is a great thing for the American people. We have been deputized to be a check and balance on the President and the other branches of government, and we will do that with dignity. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Okay, so we're seeing a new Democratic Party, a new class of freshman congressmen coming in who have openly, some of them have openly, given support to BDS. So let's look short-term and long-term, right? How is the changing face of the Democratic Party going to affect U.S.-Israel relations in the short term? And what about in the long term? Is Israel going to become a partisan issue? So let's start with Yolam this time.
Those new voices, so-called new voices, are a minority, a small minority in the Democratic Party. There is historically, and I'm sure it will remain, a bi-party support to the State of Israel. Yes, they have different of opinions. You know, also in the Israeli public opinion, there are difference of opinions between right and left, between the Labour Party or the Zionist camp and the Likud, etc. It can be also in the United States, within the Democratic Party, within the Republican Party, but I'm sure that nothing will change, and the Democratic Party, as well as the Republicans, will support the State of Israel. It don't mean they will support the government of Israel in any case and every time, but they will support the state. And you know, there is a lot of criticism about the term of Barack Obama as a president of the United States. I want to tell you that something from my own knowledge, from my capacity as an advisor to Mr. Shimon Peres, that Barack Obama was the most positive president of the United States if we are talking about Israel's security. He was ready to open everything to our defense forces, to our Ministry of Defense, to our Prime Ministry. So you can see there is a bi-party supporting policy to Israel.
Barack Obama probably did more than any other president, to anyone else, to undermine the security of Israel with the mendacious Iraq deal. But I must tell you, I think we should take this very seriously, because there's a definite trend here on university campuses among the American youth, and it's all Israel's fault. It's Israel's fault because Israel has totally vacated the battle for hearts and minds in Israel, in the world, and particularly in America. There's nothing more absurd than liberal support for the Palestinians. Why would any liberal in his right mind support the establishment of yet another homophobic, misogynistic, Muslim-majority tyranny that, by all accounts, will be a base for jihadi terror? You know, it's difficult to wrap your mind around that. If Israel were to invest 1% of state budget in public diplomacy, that's well over $1 billion. With $1 billion, you can change a lot of minds and win a lot of hearts. And Israel should be projected forcefully as something that young people are proud and eager to identify with. Israel is on the cutting edge of human endeavor in virtually every field, whether it's medicine, technology, agriculture, water conservation, communications, etc., except for one thing: it's political leadership. And it's time the political leadership caught up with the rest of the country in its achievements. And if we have to invest far more, and I can tell this as a personal experience, when I taught in a university campus on Apartheid Day, Palestinians held their Apartheid Day on campus, the reaction of the Hillel and the pro-Israeli groups was to do nothing, just so as not to highlight their activity, which is wrong. Their activity must be confronted. It must be rejected. It must be shown for the mendacious myth that it really is. And unless Israel does that, it's going to lose more and more support amongst the younger generation, who are the future leaders of the country. And this is something we have to deal with, and deal with firmly and robustly.
All right, so Israel may be a bit late in the game in realizing this potential threat to future U.S.-Israel relations. Sophia, what are your thoughts?
So, in the same way that I don't want other countries to get involved about Israeli political decisions, I'm not going to get involved for them, but I do want to give them a huge advice to learn from our politics here in Israel. We have Arab list. The Arab list in Israel. And all they do every day is to fight for the Palestinians that are not citizens of the State of Israel. So my advice to them is make sure that you serve the people that vote for you and make you congresswoman. And this is the American people. So take care of your people, take care of your interests, and start to fight for boycott Israel or other countries.
Mm-hmm. And yet we're seeing a lot of Jewish Americans supporting the the BDS campaign. So
again, the failure of Israeli public diplomacy, because it's absurd. I mean, there's nothing more un-American than the Palestinian cause, Sharia. Nothing more un-American than that. And the fact that Israel hasn't obliterated the Palestinian case in America is the fault of Israel, and Israel must bear responsibility for that. And unless Israel gears up and starts a robust and assertive public diplomacy campaign, we're going to be in trouble, because one of the biggest failures that Israel, a strategic failure, is Israel's failed public diplomacy and to project its image correctly. And, and you can see what's happening in Europe as well, because Israel's image has become...
Let's stick to the U.S. and Rabbi Ashman, let's hear from you.
Okay, I'll try to be a little bit calmer now. Having just come direct from the field and seen cut down Palestinian trees, and having been personally attacked last week, I admit I'm a little bit on edge. And a quick comment also, the Arab List has been working very hard on behalf of El Rakib, for example. These are Israeli Palestinians, Israeli Arabs. Sheikh Sayah, who is being sent for 10 months to jail for trespassing on his own land. They've been taking that case. But to the question, first of all, let's remember that AIPAC was quite upset with our Prime Minister Netanyahu for so clearly breaking what had always been the Israeli insistence on bipartisanship, and so clearly favoring the Republicans that they were, and we may pay a price for that. Secondly, I just came back from a long speaking tour, and many people in the Jewish community have given up on Israel. And you can say, what right do they have? And we don't have to worry because we saw the Christian Zionists. And I'm sure we would have different opinions on the things that cause them. But basically they're saying between Reform and conservative Jews and the issue with the Kotel, with the wall, many people look at the nation-state bill and say, that's it, the dream's over. What was our dream of what Israel should be is over.
Okay, well,
and
we
so
are
when
just
we don't
about
have
out of time, so let me just ask.
that support
Yes.
from the Jewish community, that may also affect the Democrats. Although, a few years ago, it was the Republicans that were anti-Israel, and the Democrats, it changes from year to year. It's hard to say what will be even in another month.
Okay. All right, so that's all the time we have for today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Martin Sherman, Rabbi Arik Ashelman, Sophia Nahon, and Yoram Doli. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News, on Twitter at ILTV News, and on our website at iltv.tv. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Thanks for watching.